Welcome to Boxing Info. I'm your host, The Islander, and it's been a while, and we've got a large docket to take care of today. Since I've been gone, there's been quite a few fights, and the next coming weeks there's going to be quite a few more fights coming up. A couple of things to point out right from the get-go. Turn your volume down. This is going to get dicey. The other thing is, some of you, I've got like a lot of news. Some of you are going to like it, and some of you are not going to like it. But let's get right to the biggest news over the last day. Former heavyweight champion Joe Frazier succumbed to liver cancer, and it was just recently announced that he had it, and he was in hospice care, and before you know it, he was gone. Definitely one of the top 25 best fighters of all time. Most people rank him in the top 10 heavyweights of all time, so on and so forth. Can't say enough about this man, his contribution to boxing, and he will be missed. So may he rest in peace. Okay, moving right along, and this is going to be a very long video, so be patient, and also go ahead and, like I said, turn your volume down. The last fight that I previewed was Chad Dawson making an attempt to annex the linear and WBC light heavyweight title from Bernard Hopkins. Well, they got into the ring together, and as we saw in the first round, the fight was going to go that whole way no matter what happened. And it basically counterpuncher versus counterpuncher match that not much of anything happened. Dawson may have had, I thought had an edge in the first round. And in the second round, we all know what happened. Hopkins went to do what I thought he was going to do, which was lead with his right hand, and Dawson slipped down to his left and let Hopkins slide on top of his back. Basically, Hopkins leaned on top of Dawson's back, and Dawson basically stood up and bowled him over. And Hopkins fell on his shoulder hard under the ropes and was writhing in pain. The thing is, I know most of you are probably asking, what do I think about this? The fight was originally ruled a TKO for Dawson, and then later the WBC overturned it to be a no contest and brought the title back to Hopkins. Alright, I see this both ways as far as the right and wrong of this. One, I've seen before in fights, specifically when Lloyd Huntington fought a guy named Young, I forgot what his name, a guy from Korea back on HBO in 1988. The guy pulled Huntington's head down on the back of his neck, and Huntington came up with an uppercut and hit him right square in the groin. There was no denying this. This guy went down just like Hopkins, writhing in pain, and the rule was you've got 5 minutes to be able to continue, otherwise it's a TKO. My initial thoughts on this were that's kind of the same thing here, because it wasn't really Dawson's fault that Hopkins was on his back. It was Dawson's fault that he stood up and basically shoved him off of him. At the same time, there really isn't any flagrant foul involved, because getting a person off of you is not a foul. The other side of the story is this, is that I can see Hopkins' side of it, because if an injury is caused during the first 3 or 4 rounds of a fight, the fight's ruled a no contest. Similar to like Hasim Rahman and James Toney in their rematch that was first awarded a TKO to Toney, and then it was overturned as a no contest. And I think that was the right ruling. Here, I'm good with it either way, to be honest with you. I don't want to see them fight again. I don't think, they should have been fighting to begin with at this point in time. I think Hopkins was avoiding this and was looking for a way out of this fight, is what I think he was doing. He knew it was going to be a long night with Dawson. Dawson's not easy to hit. Dawson's bigger, stronger, and faster than most anything Hopkins has ever seen before. So, I don't buy this he couldn't continue thing. And I've got precedents to relate it. All you B-Hop Kool-Aid drinkers out there, hold on to your seat, because when he fought Antoine Eccles in the rematch, the same kind of thing happened. Antoine Eccles basically separated Hopkins' shoulder. Same thing happened here. Hopkins fought through the pain and stopped Eccles in defense of his title. One of the first times Hopkins got on HBO. So he's done it before. He just wanted an out in this fight, and I'm going to leave it at that. basically the end of the story is Dawson left the ring with the belts, and the WBC stripped him of the belts and sent him back to Hopkins and ruled the fight a no contest. Alright, then we had Nonito Donaire coming back to HBO to defend his WBC and WBO bantamweight title against Omar Narvaez from Argentina, the longtime flyweight and short-time super flyweight champion of the WBO variety. And for the first 4 rounds, this was a clever little chess match until Donaire rattled Narvaez and hurt him, and then this became a very tedious chore to watch because Narvaez wanted no part of this action. And when you look at the punch stat numbers at the end of the fight, you know, Donaire only outlanded Narvaez by about 20 punches. But the thing was, Narvaez was fighting out of a shell, and he would not engage for anything. Even with Donaire standing in front of him with his hands at his waist, would not entice him. And I've seen this, you know, happen before, you know, even with success. Because the thing was, is Narvaez knew that Donaire was going to hurt him and probably knock him out. And Donaire tried as he will. I have no fault to him for this. Did whatever he could to try to engage Narvaez, and round after round after round after round went by. And finally I started thinking to myself around the 8th or 9th round, 10th rounds, surely Narvaez is going to launch some offensive to try to salvage this fight, to try to win by knockout. No, he was content just to finish the fight. Terrible, terrible fight. And Donaire won a wide decision like he should have won. What's next for him? 122 pounds. I'm thinking, I read something about Anselmo Moreno. I'm trying to think of who he's fighting real soon here in the United States. I was kind of surprised by it, but you know, Donaire's business is done here. He's looking up to 122 and even beyond. And there's some other interesting news I need to make aware of this. Rios and Gamboa, which has been talked about, because Gamboa is one of the fighters that the Donaire people are eyeing, as well as Juan Ma and a few others. Alright, then there was the news that finally, after many weeks, almost 6 weeks, the numbers were out for Floyd Mayweather's sucker punch knockout over Victor Ortiz, and the number reported was 1.25 million pay-per-view buys. I would take that with a grain of salt, because as long as it took for them to come up with those numbers, what did Michael Jackson used to sing? I don't believe it, not mine, no, no, the pay-per-view is mine, mine. No, I don't believe it. I mean, they could stand on their head and say it was 1.25 million. I don't believe it. Which goes back to Dawson and Hopkins. If Dawson and Hopkins, Dawson and Victor Ortiz are on the same level as far as notoriety to outside the boxing world. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody cares who they are. Okay? Hopkins definitely takes a lower seat to Floyd Mayweather, who's up here, and Hopkins is off your screen, you see? But the situation is this. Their opponents are nobodies to the casual boxing fan and to the non-boxing fan. So it's very difficult for me to believe that when Dawson and Hopkins does not even 100,000 pay-per-view buys, that Mayweather and Ortiz does 12 times as many, 12 and a half times as many, well, more than 12 and a half times as many. We're not comparing apples to apples, understand that. Mayweather is a staple in the pay-per-view community. Hopkins and Dawson are not. But I don't believe, with the economy being the way it is, that people are foolish enough to have thrown away $60, knowing that you don't really get your bang for your buck with Mayweather, and two, that people realistically didn't believe Ortiz had a real chance of winning this fight. They wanted to believe he did, but realistically in the back of everybody's mind they knew he wasn't going to win this fight, including yours truly. I thought he'd make it difficult for Mayweather like he did in the 4th round. I thought that would be 12 rounds of that, but I'm not buying this, and I think Golden Boy's just blowing smoke up, smoke out of their ass and trying to blow smoke up your skirts is what I think they're doing. Alright, then we kind of fast forward to this last weekend, and I just want to preface this whole thing by saying that, with the exception of Donaire and Narvaez, I would have been very much wrong about the results of all these fights we're talking about. I would have definitely have picked Angulo to beat and knock out Kirkland. No doubt in my mind. And I was feeling very good about that for the first 2.5 minutes of the fight. And it was all downhill from there after that. James Kirkland and Alfredo Angulo put on what is once in a 10-year epic battle. And the reason why I say that is, I remember a movie called The Bronx Tale with Robert De Niro and Chaz Palminteri, and there's a scene in that movie where De Niro's son is talking to Chaz Palminteri, and they're talking about women, and Chaz Palminteri is a mob guy. He's a local neighborhood boss, is what he is. He's a mafia guy, and he tells Collogial, or C as they call him, De Niro's young son, teenage son, he says, you'll have 3 women come around in your life. They're the 3 great ones. And it's just like the three boxers. In your lifetime, you will see 3 great boxers. I know some of you foolish people out there believe Floyd Mayweather is that person right now, and some of you believe it's Pacquiao, okay? And then you go back and back and back. Like, you know, in my knowledge, maybe it was Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler in that group, and then it transformed into Julio Cesar Chavez, and then into Roy Jones and Pernell Whitaker, and we're waiting for the next one. That's, you know, in Pacquiao or Mayweather, it might be that one. But in any event, he was trying to tell him, you know, you got, basically, this is supposed to be the 1960s, I think, that, you know, you got the great ones like Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson, Rocky Marciano, or I don't remember what he told them, but there were 3 in 3s. With fights and with the viciousness of the first round of this fight that comes along once every 10 years or so. You know, it's already been several years since Corrales and Castillo waged war, and it's been over 25 years now, going on, what, almost 27, it'll be 27 in April, since Hagler and Hearns waged war. And as I was going back, and I was getting one of the reasons why it's taken me so long to make this video is because, one, I've been very busy at work, and making money takes precedence over doing these videos. I'm sure you understand. Number 2 is, I've become very disenchanted with what's been going on in boxing, with Mayweather, with this Hopkins debacle, with this Omar Narvaez debacle. I mean, it's just one fight after another is garbage, 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 until something like last Saturday happens. The fact that the fight was put together is enough to make anybody excited. But what they delivered, it's very rare that 2 guys deliver like they delivered in the first round of that fight. And for the life of me, it looked like Angulo was going to fulfill the prophecy I had always thought when these 2 were first shown on HBO a couple of years ago, was that he was going to wreck Kirkland. Much to Kirkland's credit, he was in tip-top shape, and he was able to stand his wits, and I think a little bit more discipline is what got him over the top in this fight, because he was basically only a punch or 2 away from being gone. And the way he came back with the wicked power that he has, once he disconnected Angulo from his feet, I even knew in my heart the fight was over. Because once you break down a guy like that and get him basically in a submissive position, a guy who fights only coming forward, like a Yuri Boy Campos, like a Julio Cesar Chavez, it's done. It's done. The puzzle's solved, because they don't understand what just happened to them. And Angulo, as you can tell by what happened round after round after round. Now understand, it's not like he gave up, and I'm not saying that. But just a tiny bit of movement and a tiny bit of use of outside work by Kirkland was enough to just absolutely drive Angulo into, into a state of desperation. Besides the fact that he basically, I guess, blew all of his conditioning out trying to finish Kirkland in the first round. I thought it was an epic battle, and I thought it was a very, very, very well-deserved win by James Kirkland, and I really hope they do this again. And I hope that Kirkland sees better days, because both of them have had setbacks. I mean, Kirkland with his prison time and the gun possession, and Angulo obviously with managerial problems, or I should say promoter problems, where Gary Shaw finally had enough and sold his contract over to Golden Boy. I don't know how Golden Boy would feel about this, because usually when they match two guys up like this, they want to really get rid of one of them. And I imagine Angulo is something that they've staked a lot of claim in, but they've been with what's his name, Kirkland's been with them a while too. So I mean, I got to hand it to Golden Boy that this was a big risk, and it panned out. And that was it for that. On Showtime though, another fight that I would have gotten wrong. I would have thought that Glenn Koff Johnson would have given Lucian Bute a much better fight than this. And Bute just showed why, this is starting to remind me a lot of, Joe Calzaghe light, basically, Bute. Bute's title reign is Joe Calzaghe light. If that really is a term, and I know most of you Bute fans are going to go, want to kill me for saying that, but the thing is, he's fought a lot of nondescript title defenses against a lot of guys who were either past it, over the hill, or have been beaten down. And Glenn Koff Johnson was thought to be dangerous, much the same way Jeff Lacey was thought to be dangerous. And a lot of people thought, basically Jeff Lacey was the odds maker's favorite to beat Calzaghe. Johnson not on that same level, but I thought that he was going to get to the point where this fight was, a 7 rounds to 5, 6 rounds to 5 with one even. When you hear scores of 115, 113, 114, 113, and Bute would win. Much the same way that Bute's fight with, scrap that. Basically a very nip and tuck fight is what I expected. Was it Johnson disappointing? No, it was Bute being better, and so much better. And I'm beginning to wonder if the idea of the Super 6 winner facing Bute is really that good of an idea, because I think he is just way too seasoned for any of those guys. He's on top of the division, much like Calzaghe was, when we thought that Mikkel Kessler was going to provide him, maybe even beat him or provide a stern test. And no, he turned back Mikkel Kessler. This is just almost a similar thing to what Bute's doing. And I think it's a similar thing that what Bute will do if he fights Andre Ward or Carl Froch. Now you look at what a difficult time Glenn Johnson gave Carl Froch, and look at how almost impotent he was against Bute. Now styles do make fights, but believe me, I don't think Carl Froch stands a very good chance against Lucian Bute. And I think Andre Ward stands a little bit better of a chance. But much like Kessler challenging Calzaghe, I think that's what Ward and Froch will look like. There'll be some contentious moments for Ward and Bute would look like. There'd be some contentious moments for Bute in that fight. But overall, he'd find a way to turn to another gear or change on the fly, and probably win a comfortable decision over Andre Ward. I'm just thinking that out loud. So basically, I wouldn't say a career-defining win, but to this point, one of the more impressive wins of Lucian Bute's career. All right, over in the UK, much anticipated fight, and I was happy to go back and watch these, and was very much impressed with what I saw. I would have thought that Michael Katsidis would have gotten on top of Ricky Burns and eventually wore him down and stopped him if I was predicting this. I swear to you, this is what I would have thought. And with George Groves, I'm going to give him a little bit of press, because George Groves fought a guy named Paul Smith, who also both have a common opponent in James DeGale. And James DeGale stopped Paul Smith in 9 rounds. Well, Groves went out and had a ho-hum, shaky first round, in which Smith landed some punches on Groves, and it looked like, oh boy, this could be interesting. And then, as Smith was reaching in, unwisely, Groves cracked him with a right hand and sent him down. And he got back up, and he wasn't in good shape, and another big right hand from Groves put him down again, and the fight was stopped. For a guy who's normally a counterpuncher, Groves looked very sharp when presented with the opportunity to jump through the window of opportunity. And I'm very interested after that big summit, because it was a big risk by his people to take the DeGale fight, and he came out on the right side of a quasi-questionable decision, although nobody's arguing with it. to see how their careers progress, because I think that DeGale and Groves are going to be forever linked together until one of them wins a title and turns the other one back again. And what I'm saying is that if Groves does that, we're not going to hear much about it ever again. But if DeGale wins a world title and gets revenge on excuse me, on DeGale, they'll be linked together for a third fight, I'm sure. But I like this rivalry, and I like what's happening in certain sections of British boxing right now. There is some intrigue involved, albeit to some of you who are close to it, you might say you're full of crap and there's really no intrigue to it. But to me, over here, where I get limited information about it, there is intrigue to these little subplots that are happening. With Ricky Burns and Michael Katsidis, basically a boxing clinic put on by Ricky Burns. Not a guy with a lot of power, but a very precise boxer, counterpuncher, who makes very great use of his height, his reach, and his jab. And Michael Katsidis, I think, thought that he was going to walk through Burns, which was a big, big mistake. I just don't know what's left for Katsidis to do. I mean, I think a fight with Brandon Rios would be one of the best things for him, and it could be also one of the worst things for him. But I think he needs a guy like that that's going to, you know, guys like that are going to be there in front of him, because, excuse me, anybody with any type of boxing ability is going to give him fits. And it was a great win for Ricky Burns. It's, you know, twice in a row now. One over Rocky Martinez when he took the WBO junior lightweight title, and in a Rock'em Sock'em both guys down affair, and now this, you know, career-defining win over Katsidis to this point. I would like to see Burns in the mix with the Marquezes and the Rioses and I guess what's his name's Antonio DeMarco. That was the other thing that I forgot to to mention on the Dawson Hopkins undercard. What a fight! Linares, I predicted, would probably win the fight, and was winning the fight wide. Was doing everything I thought he would do to DeMarco. This is one of those rare opportunities, people. Bottle that fight up and stick it in a bottle and cork it up. And also take, obviously, like I said, the... Oh, man, I'm just like... kind of getting... I didn't have a cold, but I'm just getting over... You know, everybody else in my house was sick, and my sinuses and stuff are going crazy trying to fight it off. Put Kirkland and Angulo in a bottle and seal it up. Because the thing is, it's one of those rare moments where Antonio DeMarco basically will and conditioning and just heart overcame all the skill and all the natural ability in the world. And I think a lot of people were surprised that they stopped that fight, but, you know, Linares had stopped offering resistance. And when that happens, that's when guys get hurt bad. And if you think back to when Linares burst on the scene, he was fighting Oscar Larios, who was showing very little resistance and finally collapsed when they stopped the fight. And what did he have? A brain bleed as a result of it. Linares was in that same position as the rounds started progressing into the 9th, 10th, and 11th rounds, and DeMarco kept chugging forward. This is something that Joe Frazier would have been really proud of. Basically, a never say die attitude and a commitment to doing what they do best, which is bullying forward and basically taking the fight to the better fighter. Very reminiscent of Frazier, you know, against a better skilled opponent with DeMarco. Maybe getting a little bit too nostalgic here, but with DeMarco, you know, eventually stopping Linares on basically a TKO from punishment and just a ton of blood, cuts everywhere. Fantastic, and this is a landmark win for Antonio DeMarco, who failed against Edwin Valero in a valiant effort as well. He's another guy. He's a big, strong lightweight, like I told you in the preview, and he is going to cause problems for the likes of Brandon Rios and even the likes of Marquez and the likes of Ricky Burns. This division is slowly simmering to become one of the better divisions in boxing, the lightweight division, if the fights can be made. And going on more with that, One more fight to review, and that is in Moscow, Russia. Denis Lebedev won a unanimous, every single round, unanimous decision over James Toney. I would have been wrong about this fight too, because I thought James Toney was going to do a little bit better. You know, a lot of things were going against him. I was watching Dwyer, and Dwyer even predicted that Lebedev might stop Toney, which he came damn close to doing in like the 10th round. He cracked him with that left hook, and Toney was forced to basically hold on the rest of the fight. The situation is this. James Toney did a magnificent job getting himself down to 199 pounds. The problem is he paid a big price doing that. And number two is he relies, James Toney, all throughout his career, of guys being very aggressive against him and being careless against him. And when you have somebody like a Roy Jones or like a Denis Lebedev or even Sam Peter or Hasim Rahman, who aren't that over-aggressive type, who are going to basically play almost like a cat-and-mouse game or a tactical boxing match with Toney, that's when he looks very plain and ordinary and almost shot at some points, which in this fight he looks shot. Because 15 years ago or more like 16 or 17 years ago, back in the early 90s, James Toney was one of the top 3 to 5 pound-for-pound fighters in the world. And for those of you who, I know a lot of people in the UK will argue with me when asked who would win between a prime Joe Calzaghe and a prime James Toney. I usually tell them, watch James Toney against Iran Barkley. Iran Barkley brought a lot more danger in his punches than Joe Calzaghe did. And look what James Toney did to Iran Barkley, who of course didn't have anywhere near the skill that Calzaghe did. But his best days are long, long gone. And Lebedev, I don't know how good he is, because he's beaten up two guys who had well more than 10 years past their prime, in Roy Jones Jr. and in Toney. What next up for him should be Hopkins if he continues this thing, and I'm not so sure he'd get past Hopkins. But good win for Lebedev. He did what he was supposed to do. I don't have something written down, but something just crossed my mind. I forgot what I was going to say. It was about somebody posted a comment on one of my videos or on the channel about Lucian Bute, saying, has anybody ever seen a 168-pounder this size? Well, if you remember, Joe Calzaghe was quite a bit taller and wider than a lot of other 168-pounders. And the best fight that could ever be made at this weight at this point in time would be a prime Joe Calzaghe against a prime Lucian Bute. And two southpaws, two very skilled guys. I think that Bute carries a little bit more pop in his punch. Calzaghe carries a little bit more guile and experience and slickness to him. That would be a fantastic, fantastic tactical fight, and I don't know who would win. I really don't. Okay, a little bit of news also, and we throw this in the middle, and that is Top Rank has been making a lot of noise about getting Yuriorkis Gamboa in a big fight. They've also, since they signed Timothy Bradley, they've promised to get him into big fights right away and promote them both correctly from their previous promoters. Well, who would both be Gary Shaw, by the way, or yeah. The situation is this. I'm losing my train of thought. Top Rank has basically toyed with the idea of getting Yuriorkis Gamboa in a lightweight title fight against Brandon Rios. The initial thought was they both fight an interim fight and then meet sometime in the spring or the summer of next year. I have since read that because of what happened with Juan Manuel Lopez and that fight with Gamboa falling through the cracks because Gamboa being upset and not looking too good in his comeback fight either, even though he scored a third-round stoppage, that they don't want to wait on this. And I think their fear is that Rios is either going to vacate the lightweight division, or the dangers of the Burnses and the DeMarcos and even the Humberto Soto, who's lingering around that area, are great enough to possibly tip over the apple cart, which is Brandon Rios. They want to make this fight as quick as possible. Now, my initial gut instinct would tell me that unless size is going to be the only factor in this fight, Brandon Rios is the man with the short end of the stick here in skill. And that Rios Gamboa, with the speed and skill that he has, may not be able to hurt Brandon Rios per se like he does other guys in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth rounds. But I can imagine accumulation of those shots landing on Brandon Rios, who's going to bore his way in. And the other thing too is I don't know how Gamboa is going to carry his power up at 135. He's really a 130-pounder. And Brandon Rios is a very big 135-pounder. It's an interesting fight that I'd like to see. I'd like to see who wins. I'm curious. I'd be leaning towards Gamboa right now, but after seeing what DeMarco did to Linares, you know, we might be carving out a tombstone for Gamboa. You know, his chin wasn't that sturdy at 130 or 126. If Rios lands on it, it might be all she wrote. So that's that with that news. Okay, this weekend, big pay-per-view card. Now, here's the part where I was telling you in the beginning that a good bit of you might be a little upset with me. I had put up on a few weeks ago on my channel comments that the experiment was going to begin. Well, in that time, I've been tinkering with the experiment, and there's a couple of problems. Which, one, hold off. If you're going to buy the fight, go ahead and buy it, because this is not going to work right at this point in time. Part of the problem is that I can't just stream this fight to Justin TV or US Stream or anything like that, because they all get just blown away. This has to be done to a website, and it just can't be done to any website like BoxingInfo.com or the Islander.com. No. It's got to be... Do most of you know how Swiss bank accounts work? In order for this to be successful, it has to be done as if it's done on a Swiss bank account. And that means that nobody just scanning the internet is going to just accidentally stumble upon this. You have to know where to go to get this. And what I'm finding out is that it seemed like a very simple thing at the time, and the expense level was very low. But as I was up at 3 in the morning last Friday night into Saturday morning, doing some testing with streaming just DVDs into a computer, capturing them, and then up to the internet and looking at them on Justin TV, the quality of the DVDs is tremendous. On the notebook that is recording this video right now, it's going to upload it to the internet, the video is tremendous. And when it gets to Justin TV, it's kind of fuzzy in the quality that I don't think you'd be happy with. And I don't know why. And I tinkered with all the settings in Adobe, because it's an Adobe player, a capture that you have to use. Tinkered with all the settings, and it still didn't change anything. It looks perfect on the computer screen, and looks like crap on the computer that's actually streaming it from the internet. They're sitting side by side. I don't know how that would work going from, you know, satellite box to computer to internet, because it's not going to look any better than the DVD does. So then I started thinking maybe there's a problem with Justin TV. And as I started examining the expense of doing the Swiss bank account website, where you would only know where to go once I told you where to go, and you'd only be able to log in once I gave you a username and password, and it would be a very private screening of this, that the expense for the website, the expense for a better video capture device than the cheapy one I have, and the expense for basically getting on a T1 line to make sure that the stream never got compromised, is becoming too expensive to do this, unless the commitment was from a myriad of people, you know, of say $10 each or something like that, and I can't go back on my word and do this, and I don't think it's worth you not seeing this fight in the best quality possible, because right now we're still in I've been testing this and it's not working out too good. So that's going to be that for that issue. So go make alternate plans for those of you, Avellino, Hitman, make your alternate plans. I'm going to try this with something that's not even boxing related. And the thing is that if you know anything about FTP sites, that's what I'm kind of talking about. And you'll be informed without, you know, it costing you anything to look at this and then tell me, give me feedback. You know, when nothing, you know, because the thing is that on fight night, the powers to be, HBO and, you know, Top Rank and Golden Boy, they go out and just basically, you know, scour the internet to try to find anybody, anywhere who's streaming this stuff and cut it off. You know, they don't know from a person in their home what they're doing with the signal they're being fed, but what they do know is on the internet, when they see the fight being broadcast, you know, it's almost immediate how it gets cut down and shut off. We're not going to have to worry about that because, like I said, if I ever get this rolling, it's going to be a private club is what it's going to be. You can do all the searching you want on Google. There's no tags to this website. No meta tags, no nothing. It's impossible to find unless I tell you where it is. And even if somebody else who does arrange to do this with me tells you where it is, you're not going to be able to get on it anyway, because only one person per username and per password is going to be able to get in. So one person who has a username and password, you either use it or you let somebody else use it and you lose it. You can't, two or three or four people are not going to be able to piggyback off of a login. But that's the way it's going to be. You know, because I know there's people out there watching this saying, I'm going to take you down, Islander, and I'm going to report you when you do this. And some of you may notice a couple of videos that are missing, like the Muhammad Ali video with Larry Holmes, and the Yuri Bachikov video with Mungchai Kitakasim are mysteriously gone. They're gone because I took them off of there, because YouTube sent me emails saying that people have had copyright claims on those, that I didn't have to do anything about it, but basically they're documenting this against me. And it's not by accident that they're doing this, because for Tokyo TV to find this video on the internet where there's no real sign or proof that it's their broadcast, there's no audio to it, is far-fetched. One of you out there, somewhere out there, is doing this, and if you and I ever meet up, a roll of quarters is going to be clenched in my fist as I repeatedly bounce it off your head, because you're just a jealous piece of shit who just wants attention any way they want and any way they can get it. And when you and I come in contact with each other, we're both going to regret it, I promise. No more negative stuff. Alright, the fight card this weekend. A pretty good card. And the three fights I want to profile real quick. Mike Alvarado taking on Brady Prescott. Situation is dire for Prescott. He needs this win, and he needs it bad. Alvarado's been plagued with inactivity, with trouble with the law. He was once a bright prospect, along with Victor Ortiz. Thought those two would fight each other eventually. They never did. Toss-up fight. Basically the centerpiece for all the two of these three fights we're going to talk about is Amir Khan. And Brady Prescott wants dearly to have a rematch with Amir Khan, because when you knock a guy out in 54 seconds, you probably think, I'm going to knock him out again anyway. But he's stumbled 3 times against lesser competition, and this is a showcase chance against a up-and-coming contender in Mike Alvarado to make a statement. Under normal circumstances, if everything's equal, I would pick Brady Prescott, but the problem is that I think we may have seen the best of this guy, and Alvarado needs to make a statement to get himself into a title picture. It's a toss-up fight. I'm going with Alvarado. I just think that his power, now his chin's going to be tested. There ain't no two ways about it, and we'll see what happens when he gets bombed. And he's the kind of guy that's going to be in range to be bombed by Prescott, so it wouldn't surprise me if Prescott scores a knockout over him either and exposes him for, you know, what he is or isn't. I'll just lean gently towards Alvarado in this fight. Timothy Bradley taking on Joel Casamayor in defense of his WBO 140-pound title. Of course, the WBC has stripped him, and since then, Eric Morales has won that title. You know, it's ridiculous, but all right. Unless something drastic has happened since the last time when Bradley fought Alexander, I'm going with Bradley all day long. I don't think Casamayor has a chance in this fight. You know, I think Bradley's hard to hit. It's going to be really hard for Casamayor to hit. Casamayor's reflexes have been going downhill, and I don't know that Bradley will stop Casamayor, but I have a feeling he's going to beat him up real good over 12 rounds. He may stop him, but I think a real rough, like, demolition derby type decision is what Bradley's going to win in this fight. And this dry cough is killing me. This will be the last time we should probably see Casamayor fight at this level. I would think he's being relegated as a stepping stone after this. If he wins, I will be totally shocked. Never know. He has sneaky power. And then the main event, Manny Pacquiao in his third fight, defense of his WBO welterweight title against Juan Manuel Marquez, set at 144 pounds. If you've been watching 24/7, they're going to lead you to believe that Marquez has a real fighting chance in this fight. Marquez has a theoretical chance in this fight. And I will leave it at that, because the situation is this. I thought, much to the chagrin of most of you, that Marquez deserved to win the first two fights, and the first fight more so than the second fight, because I was just watching the first fight over again. It was being rebroadcast last night on DirecTV's audience channel, and it was HBO's broadcast of it. One of the things I'm going to take away for those of you who are crying robbery on the first round, the 10-6 round of the first fight. The first minute and 30 seconds of that round, Marquez was absolutely schooling Pacquiao. After the 3 knockdowns, when Marquez finally got up and got his bearings about him, in the last 5 seconds of that round, he was again firing back at Pacquiao. Okay, so just because Harold Lederman says that you get a point off for each knockdown is not so. It's nowhere in the rules that says that. Nowhere. Okay? So you can't, just because a guy's been down 3 times, you can't dismiss all of the work he did in the first minute and 30 and him gathering himself in the last 5 seconds of the round. I watched that round over and over and over again on TV. Not on the internet, on TV last night. 10-7. If you want to score 10-6, I'm fine with it. But the judge who did score 10-7, I'm fine with it too. That guy like me who was watching the first half of the round and said, you know, this guy was basically schooling the other guy until he got caught. Neither here nor there. I thought that Marquez won the first fight. I think he could barely have won the second fight. But a few key rounds, as I went on about this on my last channel, would really decide that fight. How you scored. You know, like I think it was I don't know if it was the 5th or the 7th round. One of those rounds could have gone either way. Where I think like Harold Lederman scored for Pacquiao, I thought Marquez won the round, and just changing one round in that fight changed the fight. But I really think that, you know, I'm fine with Pacquiao winning the second fight. Okay, now the thing was, if this fight was made at 130 pounds again, I think all of the intrigue that is going into this fight now for the media hype and stuff like that would be warranted. But the second this fight was talked about or made north of 130 pounds, I think as you go each pound above 130, 131, 132, 133, 135, 140, 144, Marquez's chances of victory decrease exponentially. And Pacquiao's chances of winning increase exponentially. Because only one of them has carried their power up and speed up with them. And Marquez has looked very, very sluggish in every fight that he's had north of 130 pounds. Throw the Mayweather fight out. Just throw that out. Casamayor, he looked very sluggish before taking over in that fight. Michael Katsidis, he looked... Juan Diaz, both the Juan Diaz fights, he looked, not like he did at 126, not like he did at 130. Especially the first Juan Diaz fight. He was rocked in that fight bad and being outmaneuvered for a while. The second fight, I think that Diaz was just fighting a little too cautious and allowed Marquez to dictate to him. So that fight really is not a good indicator. But the Katsidis fight was definitely an indicator. The power, strength, and size of a bigger man is doing more damage and scoring more points and dictating more of the action against Marquez as he moves up in weight. Pacquiao, on the other hand, has been dominating every fighter he's been in with since the last Marquez fight, starting with David Diaz. Now, here's where it's going to get rough with me, because I am not a Pacquiao idolizer. I'm not a Mayweather hater. But the Flomos out there who take a funnel as if they're on spring break in Florida and let Mayweather piss the Kool-Aid down the funnel as they drink it, don't understand. All of them say the same stupid thing, including Stephen A. Smith on ESPN, that this guy moves up in weight and he's knocking everybody out. That's not the case. He hit David Diaz with everything but the kitchen sink before Diaz finally went down. He hit Oscar De La Hoya with everything with the kitchen sink and didn't put him down. He hit Joshua Clottey with everything he could and couldn't put him down. He hit Antonio Margarito with everything including the kitchen sink and couldn't put him down or come close to it. He hit Miguel Cotto with everything he had, and he did score 2 knockdowns. They were very quick knockdowns. I mean, the second one was worse than the first. And he did put Shane Mosley down briefly. Okay. The situation is this. What you're not understanding, for those Flomos out there who have the funnel of Mayweather pissing Kool-Aid down their throat, what you don't understand is, every now and again in boxing, there is an anomaly that comes along. And I know your pay grade or your education level won't allow you to understand this, but I'll try anyway. Okay, Henry Armstrong was an anomaly. Sam Langford was an anomaly. I'm tired of explaining this to you idiots. I'm tired of it. Pacquiao is one of those people. Now, if Marquez knocks him out, well then maybe he's not one of those people. But regardless of whether he is or he isn't, or he's going to continue on this path and he will eventually fight Mayweather and Mayweather will undress him, he'll undress Mayweather, whatever. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But these broad accusations and speculation by the uneducated, ghetto-ridden Mayweather clan, okay, I don't know if they've got a high school diploma between the three of them, meaning Floyd Sr., Floyd Jr., and Roger Marblemouth, are baseless. They are baseless. And another thing I want to dispel is that supposedly Pacquiao's taken some type of steroids or human growth hormones that are undetectable by the testing that's done by the boxing commissions. I've got multiple problems with these assertions by the Mayweather people. One, this is professional boxing, okay? Before Shane Mosley's name was found on a Balco list, it doesn't mean he ever entered the ring on Balco products, by the way. It's never been proven. He was subjected to the same test to get his license, the same test prior and after his fight with Oscar De La Hoya, the second Oscar De La Hoya fight, as was Fernando Vargas a couple of fights before that. And guess what? Fernando Vargas failed the drug test. They found steroids in his system, and he was fined, and he was basically suspended. James Toney has twice been found to have steroid-type material in his system by the testing that is done. Now, some of you are going to argue with me, well, he's only doing it in the training, and he's clean by the time fight comes around. Well, you know what? The powers that be don't give a shit. The Nevada State Athletic Commission, the New York State Athletic Commission, the World Boxing Council, the World Boxing Association, they don't give a shit. They don't care. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it's highly unlikely is what I'm saying. And the other thing I want to point out is that this Olympic-style testing, that's all bullshit. Because Olympic-style testing is that when you're sitting in your living room and you're in between fights, or you're, in between track meets, you're not even, training, they can come test you any time of the year. Christmas Day, they can come test you if they want to. What Floyd Mayweather is proposing is a bastardized version of this. It's not even a real Olympic-style testing, because it only starts from the time the contract is signed. Olympic-style testing would be going on for every boxer right this very second. Okay? So it's a bullshit cop-out is what it is. Okay? The other thing I want to talk about before I actually do the X's and O's on this fight is that Mayweather came out and made an announcement this past week saying that he's got May 5th date blocked off. The MGM Grand is on hold for the biggest fight he can make. And Leonard Elby said, we all know who we're talking about, the little fella. Well, here's the deal. It ain't happening for a couple of reasons. One, there's idiotic demands of Mayweather. And two, the absolute, just idiotic demands from anything from the weight to the site. And it's like Bob Arum said, the tape just ended in the camera, and I'm hoping we're still recording. Like Bob Arum said, they haven't talked to Jerry Jones about getting Dallas Stadium, about Cowboy Stadium. They haven't talked to anybody else. Now I know what Mayweather's thinking. I'm only fighting in Nevada, so I can put that xylocaine in my hands, which no other state will allow. Okay, he also has felony charges hanging over him, which Bob Arum has said repeatedly, and they're not going to fight until that's resolved. Now, Pacquiao Marquez 3. I'm going with Pacquiao wide in this fight, and I'm fearing that he may even stop Marquez late or win a no dispute decision over him. And I'm really leaning towards he's going to stop Marquez this time, because I think that Marquez, it's very easy for somebody like Freddie Roach and the people that surround Pacquiao to pick out the limits of Marquez, okay, the counter-punching limits to what he can do. It's not like Pacquiao's not going to get hit. He's going to get hit in this fight, and Marquez is going to get hit. The problem is it's the follow-up. It's going to take more than one punch to deter Pacquiao, and I'm telling you that if Cotto can't hurt Pacquiao, Marquez at 126 pounds couldn't do it. He did it briefly in the second fight, in the second round, but at this weight, I think you're looking at a pea shooter against a guy who's got a bazooka, and that's the way this is going to be. I expect Pacquiao to win the fight by a stoppage, middle to late rounds, or a very comfortable decision. There'll be some contentious moments in this fight, don't get me wrong. What are Marquez's realistic chances? What if he hits Pacquiao and cuts him again, like he did in the first fight? What if the cuts are so bad they gotta stop the fight? I've been watching a lot of Marvin Hagler fights lately, and since that last video, and that's part of me getting disenchanted with boxing lately, because nothing will ever be like that. And I saw the meat hanging out of Mustafa Hamshaw's eyes in their first fight. Now they're not going to let that get to that point, but the guy needed 56 stitches to close his eyes up. But there's a real possibility. I think his chances are slim and none, and slim is what I just described to you, because I really think that this weight is just going to be a killer. Maybe it'll allow Marquez to take punches better, but I don't think it's going to allow him to deliver them better, and that's what he needs. You're not going to beat Pacquiao by being able to absorb his power. You're going to beat him by administering power, and that's the only way I can see it. That's going to do it for this show at 54 minutes. I will hopefully be back next week with the results show. Thanks.